Good morning. Hey, can I ask you something? And we're gonna get to the rest of the service, but if we were to ask God, we see potential for more people. And when I say more people, I don't mean just adding to the numbers, because I read something this week that said, if you watch a church grow, that alone doesn't tell the story of Jesus. Or else Walmart would tell a really cool story of Jesus. So it's not the growth. It's the impact that we have on a community. It's the giving. It's the things that go against human nature on behalf of other people. That is how we best define the nature of Jesus. So here's my question, though. If we were to say, God, we believe there are people that we haven't reached yet. If we were to get a burden and say, God, more people. We want to think that you can do in more people's lives. Because if you think of this place like a sawmill, and God brings you in one way and he sends you out another, and you're more usable, you're more long-lasting, you're more sustainable, he does better with you than you could have done for yourself, then my thought would be, then the more people that God can reach here, the better. You guys follow me? What if we were to say, okay, God, we're going to ask that you double our church this year. This year, double the church. And we don't want more church people. Keep them in their own churches. We want gritty sinners. That's what we want. People that don't like sitting right next to each other. People who are a little weary and claustrophobic, but people who need to see you more clearly. Send us those people. God, double the size of our church this year. Let me tell you something. We can't even pray that right now. Look around. This is the second service of the day. Where would we put them? We're up against an issue that we are going to at some point have to address. There's no room. And you go, well, I see empty seats. Sinners won't sit that close to you. I don't like sitting that close to people. You got to understand, we're trying to reach the hardest to reach people. And so then here's the second question. If God is going to encourage us forward, then do we think that someone's going to come in off the street and go, you know, this place seems interesting. I want to know more. I tell you what, can I build you a building so that I have a place to sit? I mean, at some point, we're going to have to face the fact that we have literally hit a ceiling. Look around. We've hit a ceiling, and it's not up to anybody else to figure it out. No one's going to come riding in on a great white hope and say, hey, I'll do it for you. In fact, I don't even want that. It's not in my notes. You're like, well, yeah, but it's Christmas season. Yeah. Yeah, I think we could be that size every week if we had the room to be. And here's why numbers matter. Every single number on a sheet at the end of the week represents an entire life story that led them to that point. There's not one heartbeat sitting in this room that doesn't have a unique story and a unique ability to reach a unique group of people. I take that very seriously. I will admit I've kind of beat my head against the wall because we're comfortable. We're in a comfortable spot. My life is easier as a pastor right now than it's been before, and I can't get God to leave me alone about it. So one of the things about Christmas that just used to drive me nuts, because remember, I was raised in church, and then I hated church, and now I'm the leader of one, is that Easter and Christmas, two things at Christmas and Easter. Christmas and Easter plays. And if you're, holding the sacred cow of Easter and Christmas plays, let me just tell you, you got your generation to do it. I hope you got it all out of your system. Because for goodness sakes, who thought, I'm going to make an enemy? Who thought, you know what I bet the world would love to see? Church people acting. Let's do that at the two services they come to. But more importantly, it's the same story. You hear the same story. You come to church and you're like, Christmas, let me guess, Jesus was born. Oh, Easter, let me guess, this is about the crucifixion. And my thought had always been, even going back, like those are the two most monumental stories in the Bible, yes. However, they were set up by the whole Bible. The whole Bible points to those two moments. Why wouldn't we take an opportunity to go, why don't we capitalize, yes, on the birth of Jesus, but what about everything that pointed to the birth of Jesus? You can see areas in the Bible where the birth and the resurrection were alluded to in the Old Testament when the rules were different, when the culture was different, and I think those are almost maybe more impactful because we don't always understand the correlation between the two. So if you're new to church or if you're new to Jesus, let me tell you this about the nature of Jesus. He has this interesting way of showing a soft spot. It's like he showed a soft spot to people with the most visible sin. People who had the most visible sin, it was like God just had this special place for them. But on the other hand, people who thought they didn't have sin were always being challenged by Jesus. And I know that sounds different, but in reality, what we're taught is that it's equality. He was telling everybody, you need me. Stop depending on yourself. Let me do it. That's the story. That's the nature of Jesus. That's either good news if you're a dumpster fire, or it's bad news if you thought you kind of had all your stuff put together and Jesus is like, that isn't going to work. So the reaction to Jesus was split, but it was the same message. You guys follow me? So because it goes against our nature on both, because if you're a dumpster fire, you'll think you're not good enough, or that God could never love you the way that you would hope, or if you're so good, and churches tend to have a few of these, that you don't even really need Jesus, you've pretty much got it all done, then it's going to go against your nature to drop where you're at and come to Jesus. So what Jesus does is he puts repetitive themes through stories in the Bible. He tells the same story over and over and over and over and over again, so that in moments where our faith needs the biggest amount of help, in moments where you are struggling the most, and you know what's funny? Most of people's biggest struggles happen in isolation. You know this? So you're going to have to take this story home with you, and you're going to have to put it somewhere that you can access it so that in your moment of isolation and struggle, you can get a hold of it. But let me tell you about a story. Let me tell you a story that happened in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, before Jesus, the government system worked differently. It says that the Israelites came to the prophet. The Israelites were God's chosen people. It would be the lineage. It's how Jesus would be protected generationally so that he could do what he did. And they came to the prophet and they said, we want a king. And Samuel goes, well, we have one, God. And they go, no, we want a real king like everyone else has. And he said, I'll talk to him. And God said, listen, it's not you they're rejecting, it's me. Give him the king. The king was Saul. Saul started off good. I'm just giving you a quick history because when we go into this story, you have to understand what led into it. Saul was very disobedient. So God said, Saul, I'm rejecting you as king, and I will instead anoint this young shepherd named David. Could be an entire sermon. It won't be today. But this shepherd named David will be the next king. Now, what does that mean for the lineage of Saul? It means that Saul destroyed not only his own life, but the legacy of those who depended on him to get it right, men. He made the lives of his lineage more difficult because of his disobedience. Men, your actions matter to those who are following you. So his son is named Jonathan, and Jonathan had been the rightly heir to the throne. So if it were today, you would understand if Jonathan wanted to kill David. It would make logical sense because he said, hey, I was supposed to be the next king after Saul, but now God has said that the shepherd will be, and you'd think that that would drive a division between the two, but the Bible tells us the opposite. There are sermons to be harvested from the attitude of Jonathan because it says that Jonathan and David formed a bond that was so close. It was closer than brothers. They loved each other. They fought together. They rejoiced together. They celebrated. They mourned. It says that Jonathan, the son of Saul, who should have become the king, chose loyalty to God's next chosen king. When God removed the throne from Jonathan and placed it onto David, Jonathan's reaction was, yes, sir, not, that was mine. And they became super close. So then fast forward, Saul and Jonathan are killed in battle. David becomes the king. So now you've got the new king. He's on the throne, and this is where we're going to pick up this story. 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 3. It says the king, that's David, said, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? Now here's how this works. If there is any remaining bloodlines from the original king, the new king would what? Wipe it out. Why? Because he would be wiping out the argument that that person deserves the throne. You guys with me? So if there were any remaining lineage of Saul, they wouldn't have been easy to spot. They probably would have been making every effort they could to change their last name to Smith or Jones. It does not say this. It does not say that Saul's lineage came to David. It says that they, in essence, were in hiding. So much so that David had to say, is there anybody out there? They said, yeah, no, there is one, but here's his story. I'm going to tell you his story. His name was Mephibosheth. And it says, here's his story. He was 5 years old when the news of Saul and Jonathan came. The servant that was in charge of taking care of Mephibosheth, in her fear and in her fleeing, she dropped this 5-year-old boy, and he became crippled in both feet. So imagine what a day this young man had. He was the heir to the throne, living in the palace, wealthy. He was of the most prominent family in the nation. He loses his father. I don't know if you guys have ever lost your father at a young age, but here's what I hear constantly about people who experience that, is it doesn't just change the moment, it affects even into the future. So not only did he lose his father and his grandfather, he lost his title, he lost his lineage, he lost his compass, and he became crippled. And instantly he went from being someone to being no one in one day. They said, yeah, his name is Mephibosheth, and he's crippled. Here's what's important to note. God is telling the story of redemption and telling the story of being redeemed to himself through this story. So remember, I'm going to tell you the story about David and Mephibosheth, but don't miss the fact that God is telling you the story of you and himself. It does not say that one day Mephibosheth woke up and was like, I am so sick of this life. I've made bad decisions. I've hurt people around me. I don't like where I'm at. I'm going to the king. I'm going to dance the dance. I'm going to say the right words. I'm going to say nice things to him, and he'll accept me. It says this. It says that the king said, go find him. Go find him. Now the rule book, remember the rule book says, and when you find him, kill him. But that's not what David said. David said, go get him. Go get him. I bring him to me. So if you're of the belief that you found your way to God, you didn't. It says that God came and found you in your broken mess of a life. And if your life wasn't a broken mess, that means you just don't realize who you were. Maybe it means that you don't realize who you maybe even still are. If you don't feel like that God offered you a rescue from your life, you will have the most difficult challenge in coming to Jesus of anyone on the planet. It's hidden in the Word. The Word says that people who think they've got it figured out have the hardest time. That would not have been the case with Mephibosheth. He was this broken, crippled mess. And it says they came and they said, where is he? They're searching. The Bible tells us that the king was searching for someone who was exiled to death. Does this sound familiar? That the king was searching out someone who had been sentenced to death. Said, go find him, and when you found him, bring him in. Because that's what sin does. Sin cripples us. And what I mean by that is this. It will eventually lead to shame, and shame eventually will lead to death. It will lead to isolation. It will lead you to not wanting to be seen. There's two kinds of people in the world. There's people that walk into church and they go, if people see who I really am, I'll be discovered. And that would be the worst thing that could happen. There are other people that walk into church and go, if I could just be seen, I could be discovered. That'd be the best thing that could ever happen. It says, go find him and bring him in. It says, when Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. They suggest this. They suggest that because of his condition, that he was probably carried in. This isn't a spiritual thing I'm going to say. This is just my personality. I want you guys to know. I hate being carried. It's awkward. It's weird. I don't want anybody to carry me. If you're like, oh, amen. No. I don't mean spiritually. Physically, I don't want anybody to carry me. Am I the only one? You guys are like, oh, I love being. Imagine you're being carried. Carried into the king. Where are we going? We're going to see King David. No. This is not good. As men, I can imagine he probably didn't want to be carried in front of the king. Wouldn't you love to think that he would walk in triumphant? I was the son of Saul, or Jonathan. I was the grandson of Saul. I once was the heir to where you sit. And wouldn't you think that just as people, we would love to be able to walk in? But it says he was carried in and set in front of the king. And not only was he set in front of the king, the law was against him. The rules were against him. He was condemned to die, and he had nothing to offer. Can I say that? I just want to make sure we understand what the situation was. I just want to make sure that we are understanding the setting. The setting was somebody who had once been okay, was now not okay, carried in front of the king, condemned to die. And David says, with an exclamation point, Mephibosheth. It doesn't say this, but here's what I think. Contractually, everything was stacked against Mephibosheth. But for some reason, David shows an excitement. There's this excitement of like, hi, you. You got to remember, he didn't even know that he existed. Hi, here's what I suggest. And it's not listed in the Bible, but here's what I think. I think that when he saw Mephibosheth, I think Mephibosheth probably looked like Jonathan. And there was this emotional reaction because remember, this young man had been 5 years old when Jonathan had died, and now it says that he's an adult. So it had been years since David had seen Jonathan, and he has this emotional, almost outburst reaction, and it's this moment of love. Mephibosheth couldn't have understood this because his dad's friend. I mean, it wasn't like he would have felt an emotional connection. All Mephibosheth is seeing is the rules. But David sees a person. He says, at your service. Isn't that what people do when we are brought in front of the king? What do you want me to do? What am I here to do? What do you want me to say? How am I supposed to act? You ever been to church and you're like, what am I supposed to wear? Has anybody ever been to Catholic church? When do I stand? I don't speak that language. What do I do? David is having this emotional reaction out of love. Mephibosheth is having this fearful reaction out of hesitation. He's like, hi, what? David says this, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. David goes, you couldn't understand what I'm doing. You couldn't possibly understand what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know the rule said that I have to kill you, but I'm going to do the opposite. He says, I will restore. Mephibosheth probably didn't even remember what all he had owned before. He didn't probably even know what all had been his previously. I will restore to you the land that belonged to your father Saul, and you will always eat at my table. So there's a plot twist. It says, are you going to kill me? No, the opposite. I'm going to make you family. He says, well, I don't have anything to offer. And David says, no, I know. You don't have anything to offer. I have a lot to offer. That's why you're here. You're not here because I want something from you. You're here because I have something for you. You are here in this moment because I have something to give you and you have nothing to give me. I don't love you for what you have to offer. I love you for who you are. You remind me of somebody that I used to really, really love. No possible way could he have understood the moment. No possible way could Mephibosheth understood the moment from David. And no possible way could David have understood that what he was doing was he was demonstrating for us what Jesus would eventually do for us. When God does these sorts of things, it's hard to overcome. It's hard to accept. Because as people, we want to think that we've contributed or that we can hold our head up or that we have walked our way in or we worked our way in or that there's some sort of an agreement and God gives us because we did. And it goes against our nature when the king says, no, you didn't bring anything in. You don't have anything. You're here because I have something for you. Okay, but why? It goes against our nature. It doesn't feel good. What feels good is if you'll give the church $1 million, you're in. You can buy, you can buy your way in. That just goes right with our nature. Like, well, I don't have $1 million, but at least it gives me something to work towards. When God goes, no, you have nothing. I'm gonna carry you. You're not gonna walk in. I'm gonna have you carried in. Mephibosheth's response is this. What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? It's a humbling thing to be loved by Jesus. It should be. It should be. It should be a humbling thing for Jesus to call you into the family. I'll explain why sometimes it isn't, but in reality, God gives us this story so that in moments where we feel the least lovable, we have an example of someone else who is also the least lovable, and it demonstrates for us how God feels about us in those moments. Then the king summoned Ziba. Ziba had worked for Saul, and it sounds like Ziba was managing whatever Saul had owned. And it says this, give him everything Saul had owned. Now, if you're Ziba, you're like, okay. Kind of been doing some good things out there. I've been planting some good crops. I've been working. Sure, why not? Give everything to him. And then it goes on. It says, Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table. Now listen to this. It says, your servant will do whatever my lord the king commands his servant to do. So he says, oh, and by the way, now you work for him. Oh, and I'm not done. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. See, that's even different. He didn't call him in and go, you have been like our best servant. We've been reading the reports that we get every month, and you're like a gold star employee. I don't know what their jobs would have been, but you're Mephibosheth, you've done such a good job, I can't help but call you family. It was the opposite of that. He said, because of who you are, I saw you out, I've found you, I've carried you in, and I've made you family. And Mephibosheth, his answer was, why? And David's answer was, just 'cause. So let's fast forward. Let's go to the New Testament. And this is, and I'm going to hurry through this part of it, but we have to understand when the story of Mephibosheth is turned and it's unhealthy and it's broken and it's flawed. Because as people, sometimes if we're raised in the king's prosperity, if we're just raised in it, it's just what we know, we start to think that somehow we've earned it. Have you ever known young people who've been raised in a wealthy home from an early age, how they can, they don't all, but they can develop this sense of, my dad's important, so that makes me smart. We're being very, very careful not to be judgy, but you've all known something like this. Well, I've earned my Lambo at 16 years old. And you would think that, we know that doesn't even make sense. But if you're raised in it, your perspective can change. The Pharisees had been raised in it. They'd been raised in the law. They'd been raised in power. They'd been raised in prominence. They'd been raised in all of the things. And they did what people can sometimes do, and that is this. They started trying to figure out why they had deserved what they had. And Jesus is giving the exact same message to Mephibosheth. He's saying, I'm willing to carry you in, but the rules say you have to be carried in, you can't walk in. And the Pharisees said, no one's going to carry us. No one is going to carry me. No one is going to allow me or cause me or force me to set down my accomplishments. I'll do it my way, and we have to be accepted. But in a weird way, Jesus was offering the Pharisees the same thing King David was offering Mephibosheth. You're condemned to die, but I'm asking you to set that down and join me as family. But the Pharisees' perspectives were different. It said this in Matthew chapter 15, talking to the Pharisees. He says, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips. Have you ever known anybody like this? That like if you were to just silence their words, you'd get a better picture of where their hearts were? But then with their lips, they say one thing, but with their heart, you know it's different. What they're trying to do, what people are trying to do in that moment, not even being judgmental, you'll understand what I'm saying. They're trying to talk their way into something. Oh, God, okay, I'm on team God, like me and God are like this. But then who they are in their personal lives doesn't match what they're, see what I mean? Jesus says they're not willing to be carried in, so they're trying to talk their way in. I don't have their heart. Their heart is far from me. In fact, God in general is an inconvenience to their system. They worship me in vain, and their teachings are merely human rule. What Jesus is trying to explain to the Pharisees is you can't walk your way in, you can't work your way in, you can't talk your way in, you have to be carried. But that's what I want to do. I want to carry you in. I want to invite you in. And the Pharisees said, we like our way better. So if we were to use reasoning real quick, just the way that people can logic, and I learned this in college, and I was reminded of it again this week. We have the ability to put pieces together and form a picture in our logic and in our reasoning. If I told you I like steak better than I like chicken, first of all, you should say amen. Second of all, if I were to follow that up with, but I like chicken better than turkey, you already know something now that I didn't say. You already know information that I did not specifically give you, and that is that I like steak better than turkey. See how logic and reasoning works? Let's try to figure out what the Pharisees' end game was, because I think logically we can reason through and see what their end game was, because I don't think they disguised it. I think they had a plan that they had a lot of confidence in, and Jesus is desperately calling to them, your plan won't work. You're trying to talk your way in. You're trying to work your way in. You're trying to behave in such a way that ties my hands so that I have to give you something. It's as useless as Mephibosheth saying, my grandpa was there first. You owe it to me. It won't work. Matthew chapter 7, this verse fell open to me this week. I've heard this verse since I was a child. I've never heard it like this. It says, not everyone, Jesus is telling them, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. You cannot walk in with your Shiloh Ranch membership card. We don't have membership cards. And be like, you're not going to believe this. You're welcome. God's going to go, okay, hold on. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. This is Jesus trying to explain to the Pharisees, like you're not going to talk your way into it. And then he says, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not use the right words? In your name, do we not drive out the demons? And in your name, do we not perform miracles? We said the things, we did the things. So what they're saying is, here's our qualifications. Here's why we think you have to let us in. Right here. And it says, and I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. This used to scare me because I used to think like, well, how do I know if I've done enough? And I think I've even heard this verse taught, like, not everybody who says, Lord, Lord, but only those who do the will of my Father. And I'm like, well, what if I'm not doing enough? This verse is a scary verse until you realize that what Jesus is saying to the Pharisees isn't what they said, it's what they left out. What they left out was anything to do with God. They did not say, I don't want to be separate from you. I don't want to be cast away from you. I did what I did because of you. They said, we did these things for ourselves so that in this moment, we wouldn't have to face punishment. We worked harder than everyone else. We did more than anyone else. God goes, for who? For me? Well, no, but we did like a lot. And Jesus has given them a warning that says, listen, the people who get in are people who get in because of who they are in me. It's because I see myself in them, and it was this relational thing. They might not even have been very good. I honestly think there's going to be really bad Christians that get into heaven. And I think there are going to be people who were thought of as really good Christians who don't. And what he's warning the Pharisees of is this. He's saying, you didn't let me carry you in. I had a desire to seek you out and to find you and to carry you in, and you resisted because you wanted your own way. You wanted to do it the way that you wanted to do it. So, steak, chicken, turkey. Their end game was they wanted to demand eternity. That was their end game. The Pharisees' end game was they wanted to demand for themselves eternity, but they wanted nothing to do with God. So much so that they wanted to kill Jesus, they just were afraid to. They were operating in fear. Their motivation was the fear, listen to me. The Pharisees' motivation was the fear of punishment. They wanted the God of heaven. They had no interest in the God of earth. They said, you be God up there, we'll handle it here. God's going, that doesn't work. 1 John 4:18 says, there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. Now, if you think that God has instructed you to fear him, I know what verse you're using. It's the verse that says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What it's saying in that verse is, if you are fearful and just running around crazy, why not use that fear to come to me? It says it's the beginning of wisdom. It does not say it's the completion of wisdom. God says, if you'll get close enough to me, we will develop a relationship and things will change, and all of a sudden fear can't exist anymore. He's not saying, you better stay afraid of me. I thought that's what it said. God says, allow your fear to bring you in so that your fear can be melted away and we can become relational. You let me carry you in. Okay. Here's the heart of the sermon, and I got 5 minutes, so listen quickly. David is banished from the kingdom because he's at war with his son. His son is trying to take over the kingdom, and David leaves. And David leaving was probably in an effort to preserve his son's life. But in battle, his son dies, and David is heartbroken, and he's returning back again. So David has left his kingdom, and now he is coming back to it. And it says, as he's coming back, here comes Mephibosheth. Now remember, everyone who was loyal to David had left with David. You with me? So once again, Mephibosheth is facing losing a father figure. David is returning, Mephibosheth hasn't gone, and David is going, okay, so there's a lot going on. I mean, it's pandemonium and chaos, and David's coming back, and he sees Mephibosheth, and his question was, why didn't you go with me? I don't think it was accusing. I think he was just like, what happened? And Mephibosheth says this. He says, my lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said to Ziba, so remember Ziba, he said, saddle my donkey, I'm going. It says, I'll have my donkey saddled, and I will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. What he's saying is this. He says, I'm not here to plead my case. I'm not here because I'm hoping to be let back in. I'm here because I want you to know I love you. And I am loyal to you. And whatever you have heard, you need to hear me say it. I wanted to go and I got betrayed. So do whatever you see fit. See, that's how you know he meant it. That's how you know Mephibosheth was on the up and up. Because it wasn't like, so it's cool. I can have my stuff back, right? My inheritance. He said, take whatever. Listen, I'm not asking for anything. Here's why. Here's why. I was carried in with nothing. I was carried in with nothing, with no value, condemned to death. I was in isolation. I had been banished. You sought me out. You brought me back. I want you to know how much I love you, but I don't feel entitled to anything. That is not the same as modern Christianity, myself included. I like to think of things that are mine as mine. Mephibosheth is an inspiration to all of us because he goes, I don't think of anything that's mine as mine. Everything was a gift. You gave everything to me. I just want you. I just want you to know I wanted to go with you. Now, David does something interesting here because in my mind, what I would like to have seen, because I am so just in my spirit sometimes, what I would have liked is David said, you wanted to come with me and Ziba betrayed you? Hey, Ziba. Take that, Ziba. Never liked you from the beginning. He says this. The king said to him, oh, okay. Oh, good. Remember, chaos, pandemonium, they're returning. The kingdom is coming back into order. A lot of stuff going on. And David goes, where were you? And Mephibosheth is like, I love you so much and I wanted to go. And David's like, oh, okay. I assume that's cool. But then he says this. And it's probably one of those moments where it's just a lot going on. David says, oh, okay, no, that's fine. I order you and Ziba to divide the land. I just told you he betrayed me. And now I have to give him half of my stuff. If you are being honest, you would be offended. I think Jesus is warning us of something in this specific story. I've never understood why David would do that. I think Jesus is warning us that religion will destroy you. religion will destroy you because religion is based on your efforts and God's return to you. So when God gives you something, you don't feel like it's a gift. What? You feel like what? You earned it, and you deserve it, and you own it, and it's yours. And if God ever asks for it back, we say things like, after all the things I've done. You have a blowout on the way to work, and you're like, why did these things keep happening? I paid the third of my tithe this week. That was a third of the tithe. It's just me being stupid. But God says it robs you of your flexibility. When you are inconvenienced, even in the slightest, you feel like that you've been robbed. How dare someone? How dare someone get something that was mine? And God says, hey, read this story again. He says, Ziba betrayed me. Ziba was a bad guy. Ziba was wrong and I was right. And the king says, give him half of your things. And listen, if we're religious in our core, we'll say, no, I did it right. If he wanted what I have, he should do what I did to get it. I've heard preachers say that. Gives me the Lloyd Christmases. But Mephibosheth, my prayer is that we can adopt a little bit of his heart. If I could pray one thing for our church right now, it would be give us the heart of Mephibosheth, who remembers in times of stress, who remembers in times of drought, who remembers in times of inconvenience or difficulty. He remembered being carried in. He didn't forget that he'd been carried in. And he said, give Ziba, give someone you think is bad, half of you, what you have been given. And Mephibosheth says this. He says, let him take everything. Are you kidding me? Because somewhere between being carried in and David returning it had become relational for Mephibosheth also. He said, are you kidding me? You were the king that could have killed me, and you brought me in, and you loved me, and you called me family. He can take it all. How often do we get upset when we feel like we're not getting what we deserve, and it's because we forget that we were carried in. He was not saying, Mephibosheth, give him half of your things. He was not saying, reward Ziba at your own expense. He was saying, I'm willing to pay the expense of Ziba also. And Mephibosheth goes, yeah, no, it wasn't ever mine. It was never mine. We can't be generous if we're religious. We can't be generous if we feel like we deserve or that we owe or that we are owed or that we're underappreciated. Oh my gosh. You know what word I think should be banished from the church? Underappreciated, because you're setting a standard of the amount of expectation of appreciation that you think you deserve. It's church. We're all underappreciated because we're all here for people that don't go here yet. If I had to pick between you as a Christian and an unsaved person, I would give them your spot. I'm not asking you to leave. Listen, I'm not asking you to leave. But think about it. Why is church for church people? Why would a church person ever go, I just feel super underappreciated? Bleh. Then go somewhere that is about you. Because we are about the lost. And when God says, give to a bad guy half of what I've given you, our response should be, I got carried in. Take all of it. Why should we not rejoice when someone who is bad gets something that we thought was ours, but instead we resent it and we question if God is even who God is, because if God really was who God says he was, he would reward us for the things that we've done. He did. He sought you out and he carried you in and he called you family and he loved you when you were not worth loving. Religion makes us brittle and ugly, and we develop this face that looks like we just ate a lemon, and someone takes our seat and someone takes our parking spot and somebody else gets recognition, and we're like, ew. You know what I hope? I'm going to tell you the honest truth, and I don't know if this is going to make the recording or not. I pray to God that if we ever become Pharisees and we ever lose the heart of Mephibosheth that says this was a gift, we were carried in, I pray to God that he burns this building to the ground and scatters us to the wind so that somewhere else God can bring up somebody who grasps what's been done for them. And I mean it. From the depth of my guts, I pray that God never lets us become so religious that we think we have somehow earned something special. This is the worst social club that has ever existed, because the deeper in you go, the more you give up. It doesn't, if this is a social thing, shut the doors. And if you think, well, there's room for sinners to sit, I said it, they're not going to sit that close to you. That David said, probably honestly in just a scattered moment, we'll give him half of your things, could be upsetting until we see Mephibosheth respond with half, and you have all of it. I just want to live with you. You've never let me down. You've never called me what you could have called me. You've never done to me what you could have done to me. Take everything. I don't want anything. I just want to know that you and me are okay. That is the heart of following Jesus. So let me ask you this. If God himself were to send a messenger this morning and say, Shiloh Ranch, good news, hell got canceled. How would that affect your faith? How would that affect your day-to-day behavior? If the temptation would be, really? That's a hint of religion. It means that you're here under duress. You're here under a sense of responsibility. You're here because you're afraid if you don't, you're going to experience punishment. You're here hoping you can talk your way in or walk your way in, and you are not getting from God what God is offering, even sitting in the same seats next to someone who's got tears coming down their eyes going, I don't deserve it. You can sit in the same building, say the same words, hear the same sermon, and be as lost as the moment you walked in if you are making an effort to deserve it. Because when you make an effort to deserve it, it says that they wanted to write Jesus completely out of the equation. That's what we do when we say, well, I don't want to go to hell. I want my walk to be a reflection that says, hell or no hell, I don't care. I don't care. I have experienced a goodness from God that makes me want in closer. And if he takes everything in the process, it was never mine anyway. Can you imagine the damage we can do to the enemy in the lives of people who feel like they're not qualified to be church people? Maybe we should change the name of this place. I want this to be a place where the most gritty people on the planet say, I at least want to see who Jesus is. And if they can't see him in person, my hope is they see you. They see Mephibosheth saying, take all of it. I want people to see the story of David and Mephibosheth played out in my life. I want my life to demonstrate a love for people that goes beyond what I'm owed or what I deserve or what I'm afraid of, that says, you don't remember the condition I was in when he came and found me. And if that's not who we are, I want to challenge us with, let's just close this place down anyway. Can I say it this way? We need to come to terms with the fact. We're going to have to face the fact at some point. We're going to have to get real about the reality of this. We need to build more room, or we need to close it down. We're there. This won't make the recording, I promise you, but as uncomfortable as that makes me, because I've been through one building program already, it's not realistic to think that someone would walk in and go, man, I would love a new place to sit. Don't worry, I'll pay for it. That would be like bringing a baby home from the hospital and going, if you want a room, you build it. Let's pray. God, I open-handedly offer this church and everyone in it, from the bottom, God, from the depths, God, of what feels like desperation. Give us the heart of someone who's been mercifully carried in and rescued from a life that we couldn't have gotten out of. God, just blow to pieces this attitude of what we feel owed or what we feel like we've deserved because of what we've done. God, just scrub the gross out of our spirit. Scrub the religion out of our nature. Let us see that it was a gift and we were brought in and we were called family. God, it will change us. God, for the people who cling to that, take them somewhere else and give their seats to someone who's lost. Give their seats to someone who's desperate. Give their seats to someone who feels like they're owed nothing. Give their seats to someone who's willing to be carried in. Because, God, the truth is, our words and our service will always reflect that. I am not worried about our volunteers or about our giving if you have our hearts. If you have our hearts, we will line up around the door to do more. We won't have to beg people. We won't have to ask people to be more involved. So I'm not asking for better volunteers. I'm asking for pure hearts that see that you came and found us and you rescued us and you brought us in. God, I pray for the people that will be here tomorrow, for the conversions, for the moments where you see us as being savable. God, let people see themselves that way also tomorrow. For the people that may only be here once a year, help them to see themselves as being carried in and loved and adored in the same way that David saw Jonathan and Mephibosheth, that God, you see yourself in us. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.